you can get more well acquainted with that is to just play more high stakes matches. And that is the thing about these types of players. They do tend to get themselves in high stakes matches where they are more or less semi consistently fighting for those top spots. So this will be an absolute pivotal point to make sure who can get it done and who cannot. I think we are ready to get into game. Our very first Leona Mirror matchup. I am so excited. I think we should probably cover the battlefields right out of the gate, where we have Windswept Hillock. We're once again giving ganking to our units, and I think slowing down the game with a battlefield like the Forgotten Monument, where you can only scores after their third turn, until their third turn, I'm sorry, is really setting up both of these Leonas for success right out of the gate.
Right. So I think one of the things to remember with a card or a battlefield like Forgotten Monument is it's only good if you want the game to go slower. And there are some decks where even though you want the game to go slower, allowing your opponent to get control of the other battlefield where you can't score can backfire. So this is a very powerful battlefield, but it does have a drawback, and you have to be able to play around that effectively.
And play around effectively, they will attempt. Now, these players in the early game already going blow for blow. However, we have our red side Leona sticking in just that little bit longer, despite the early investments coming through. Now, when we are looking at a mirror matchup, it is really the minute details that will be making the difference here. And with a new set, there are still a lot of moving parts taking place here. Now, Honest Broker making its way onto the battlefield as well. And it's going to be very curious how these resources will be managed. A single card, a single rune instead of a power being sacrificed here will be paying out dividends over and over and over again, because the margins are absolutely minimal between mirror matches.
Yeah, now this is one of the difficult scenarios to be in here if you are I want to say MrRishi. Yeah. Look, both battlefields have been lost right now. You are very effective on the attack. But that said, look, this is a mirror match. Leona versus Leona. All of these stuns, like crazy, will be coming in, and this Leona is going to have to find a way to break through all of the stun effects that exist in this common order domain. Look, there's Thwonk, there's Rune Prison, there's Zenith Blade because you are Leona. There's a plethora of stun effects that exist in this matchup. So
And
Leona's gonna have to figure out a way to get around this, and right now I just don't see it.
yeah, and that is kind of the issue here, because they are both fielding these effects. They can maybe neutralize each other just a little bit, and then it makes it even more important to get a foot in the door right from the get-go. These early units making their way onto these battlefields and holding on may be all that we need to see in this game. And how the recovery will be, there are plenty of ways to do it, but when both decks are so geared towards holding on, you sometimes fail to get a grip right out of the gate. And when there's no gap to take advantage of, it's going to come down to the absolute wire, and there we have it. I mean, we were going tit for tat here.
Yeah, so 2 damage is going to get marked, and it looks like he's going to target his own Poro just to be able to get the he knows he's going to lose the Poro, just wants to be able to get those 2 gold tokens. And so that's just going to help him out in these future turns, allow him to just kind of save on these rune costs in these future turns. But for right now, just doesn't have an answer to that Leona, thankfully, for MrRishi's sake, because now he's going to be able to get at least a little bit of a foothold here, and he's going to have to figure out a way to close this point gap lead that has been established here from this early game. And yeah, I mean, he's not out of the woods yet, but he's definitely finding that light at the end of the tunnel, so to speak.
Yeah, we are stabilizing just a little bit, making sure we can plateau a bit, make sure we can find our footing again, because currently we do have a bit of advantage when it comes to the cards in hand department, being balanced out by the runes available. So, you know, it is really a balancing act right now, and it doesn't matter if your opponent is in a bit of a points lead if they cannot manage to close out the game. And that is really the pivotal point here, because with Leona making an entrance to the battlefield, it really is going to become I don't want to say a race to the bottom, but who can keep as many bodies on the field is one of the main priorities in a matchup like this.
Yeah, so now it's going to be up to MrRishi. I think he's considering using something like Zenith Blade, but with 4 runes available for Matt here, it's going to be very, very scary. Now, this Meditate is going to be popped off here onto this Sand Soldier, just to be able to draw 2 cards while it's available. And now that just makes things a little bit more difficult. And what looks like is going to be another power cost, a Hidden Blade likely going to be put onto the battlefield there. So now Matt has, or Mr. Rishi rather, is going to have another card to have to play around here, and the fact that there's still more gold tokens to be utilized is very scary, just because that means he's going to be able to get to that 12 rune threshold that much faster. But instead, just going to be able to rely on exactly the Hidden Blade here. It says, look, I have enough tools to be able to answer what's going on for right now. I just want to be able to develop further. I don't mind too much about the point lead. However, there should be a 4th point for Matt here, as he was already at 3, and this would have been that 4th point for him.
Yeah, and I think when you look at the overview here, all the initiative is really laying on our blue side Leona here. They are really tasked with the quest to find a way back in. Yeah, they have stemmed the bleeding, but you know they're not running just yet, right? So they need to find that little bit of extra momentum. And I think that the advantage of having so many extra bodies at your disposal as our red side Leona representative is going to be paying out in a big way. But the answer is here. It's a big investment, and those are usually quite vulnerable into a Leona. However, the fact that they can get rid of their opponent's hero here might be that pivotal point, what they're looking for. But look at this absolute flood of mana available on the red side.
Yeah, so Matt's supposed to be at 5 points now, got that hold point. But man, that Harness Dragon really putting in work there. I think we don't really fully yet realize how much of an impact this has had. That was the one turn that the Leona could have gotten that off, because if there is that not so fast, you're now spending 8 runes just to put down a 6 might unit and not even be able to utilize it on the turn that you're playing it on. So the fact that he is able to do this thing here is incredibly devastating. Now this discipline is going to come down, is going to be able to get rid of this Leona, hopefully, because there is that buff and that shield is going to force the trade. So now another gold token going to be generated. And I mean, there's still just a plethora of runes available for Matt.
And cards
we'll
to
have
back
to
it
see
up.
how he navigates the rest of this turn, but man, losing that Leona was rough.
It is rough, but I think that the impact of a card like Harness Dragon, it's really going to be the initial kill effect, yes. However, the threats it poses afterwards, I feel like Leona is exactly geared up against exactly these types of threats, where there's a lot of might on a single unit, and we have seen the reliance of Sand Soldiers before, right? Where we are very okay, kind of playing them out against each other, just stunning them and taking care of business like that. And you cannot underestimate the absolute tempo advantage they have currently, 5 against 2. They have all the time in the world.
Yeah, I mean, this Harness Dragon's going to be a lot of work, though. 6 might is nothing to scoff at, especially in a color pairing that it feels very soft in terms of might per actual units. I know that Azir is able to kind of get around that effect, so to speak, through just dragging all of those small little Sand Soldier tokens. But besides that, there's not very many big units in the calm and order domains, and Harness Dragon really just being one of the biggest ones.
Yeah, and don't underestimate, that is a Harness Dragon with ganking currently. So if there are extra move options available later on, he can up the pressure from a battlefield and cheat a bit of tempo like that. Now, Hidden Blade coming down, and I think you're going to have to be not... you're gonna have to be very careful with how you apply Hidden Blade, especially when it takes care of only minor threats, right? I think it's very important to keep your opponent away from that deadly 6-point thresh mark. Yes. However, cards and giving them away to a player that has this many runes available to exploit the cards that they will be drawing, that might be a steep price to pay in a matchup that already comes down to very minute differences in resources available.
Yeah, now the Defy there just going to be able to deny that, that resource that you were talking about, going to allow himself to get all the way up to that 6-point threshold potentially on this following turn, and then that 7 to 8 is so much easier than going from, or sorry, 6 to 8 rather, has felt a lot easier than going from 7 to 8, because once you're stuck at that 7-point threshold, it feels like your opponent has such a easier time to really kind of stabilize here, and it looks like this Tiana Crown Guard is going to help him do so. Denying this 1 point is going to be a very impactful effect. Effectively gains him 1 life in a game that you really shouldn't be able to do that.
And not only that, this kind of paralyzes any further development until this issue is addressed. And because it has deflect, I mean, there's plenty of runes to work with here from the Leona side, but it really comes down to those hidden blades or putting up a proper fight. But currently, Leona is just lacking the bodies, and I doubt they're going to have the tempo to deal with it this very turn. So any time that Tiana is allowed to exist just that little bit longer might be the way forward. But here we might seek an answer. And, I think the best way to fight fire is with an Inferno of similar size.
It seems like both of these players do not want to progress this game at all, as
I
both
hope you
Tiana Crown Guards are occupying both battlefields. But the difference is this Harness Dragon, like you had said, has that ganking available. So MrRishi does have an opportunity to interact with this Tiana Crown Guard that Matt doesn't. So we'll have to see how both of these players navigate.
But that is so risky, right? Because you are attacking into a Leona with energy and the runes ready to neutralize a single big threat. That feels like such a tough ask. However, I think I love to see this new iteration of the game, because we're all familiar with intentionally drawing and how boring it is. But now we are unintentionally drawing the new phase of Riftbound that you were not ready for. Now they will be committing into a battlefield that is heaped with trap. That is a hidden blade, taking care of that. And man, I mean, the cards, they're welcomed, but that big body, keeping them in the game might have been preferable.
Yeah, it's definitely going to be a difficult scenario to be in here. Look, the Tiana Crown Guard is at least still safe for this next following set of turns. It is going to be up to MrRishi to hopefully find something a little bit more useful in these following turns. There is that Leona that does come in ready, so he is able to get around this hidden blade through this effect. But it looks like he's going to tap himself out just to be able to get around this all and hopefully clear this battlefield, get himself finally some points on these following turns.
Yeah, but you're still fighting into a Leona with so many stun effects. That is exactly the thing that I was so wary of, right? Those bigger bodies make it such a scary engagement for the Leona to commit to. And now we are evacuating. We are keeping our Tiana alive while dealing with our opponents on the other side. And I feel like these hit and go tactics coming out from Maggio on this side are really making the difference in this matchup.
Look, that Zenith Blade was just so well timed. It protected the Tiana Crown Guard, denied his opponent's Tiana Crown Guard, and gained him a point here, which means that what should have been an extra point for MrRishi is now negative points for MrRishi and +2 points for Matt, and once was a very stabilized board state for MrRishi, has now gotten completely out of control, and it's going to be up to him to figure out a way to answer this, and soon, as he no longer has access to that ganking.
Yeah, and already fully tapped out as well. And I think if you're quiet, you can hear it in the distance. You can hear the Pirates of the Caribbean theme. And I can hear Tiana say, "This will be remembered as a day that you almost caught Tiana Crown Guard," while she zooms over to the other side of the battlefield and sails away with your flagship. It's kind of what we see transpire right here. And when Tiana is holding that point here and inching Machio closer and closer to victory, I think the options are running out just that little bit. Despite that Leona being quite beefy, a single that you are so vulnerable when there's just a single body on that battlefield and you are completely tapped out, regardless of how many cards you have in hands. You are vulnerable, and Maggio is looking to punish, looking to exploit, and looking to win game one.
Yeah, this Tiana Crown Guard's just been such a powerhouse. I think both of these players recognizing this, as both of them have brought it here and brought it out in these crucial turns. While Matt Rishi, or MrRishi rather, was able to deny 2 points, it just, the 2 points that were denied, in fact 3 points that were denied from this Tiana Crown Guard in response for Matt Gia has just been so devastating. And now this Leona is going to come down here as well as this hidden card, which we have to assume is that hidden blade. So very difficult scenario to break through. And unfortunately, this Tiana Crown Guard has no body or no tank to hide behind, but it is still a 5 might unit with a hidden blade for protection.
It is a 5 might, but I think the bag of tricks that can deal with this Tiana might be running on empty, because Tiana Crown Guard is not a card you run 3 times in your deck. That is just simply too much of a good thing. So I would be quite surprised, despite the plethora of cards available to Rishi here. It might be a tall order ever still. And, well, here we have the first array comes through, but you really need a backup plan. This really feels like a sacrificial lamb, and even though Leona might be quite willing to fulfill that role, do they have the backup?
So Deflect is going to be used, and the Zenith Blade is going to be cast here. Now, it is going to be up to Matt to either have some sort of answer right now, but this buff is going to come in if he doesn't have something like a Thwonk. And there is the Thwonk, so it has to be Defy in response, and it looks like that is going to be the case. And yet another Thwonk going to come down, and now
no.
MrRishi not going to be able to get it here. And unfortunately for him, that is going to mean game number 1 going to Matt Gia off the back of this Tiana Crown Guard.
Answers to make sure that a single gap is no longer enough, because you can deal with the stuns for an Annie. And if they don't have the bodies to really back it up, that spells out trouble. And I think the first thing I get so giddy about in this mirror matchup is it means that one of these Leonas will be making top cut. We're getting a Leona in our top 4 in our very first week of Spiritforged. And that is something that excites me to enormous lengths.
I think Leona is just one of those really cool decks. I wasn't sure if she had scalability, but it looks like that is going to be the case, as it definitely feels like the deck has gotten better with this next set. I mean, access to battlefields like Forgotten Monument, access to cards like Tiana Crown Guard definitely improve
Sasuke, I'm going to have to
abilities.
interrupt here, because look at the battlefields we are fielding. What an absolute horrendous position to be in. On the one side, you cannot score until your 3rd turn, and on the other side, when you conquer here, you're going to have to recycle one of your runes. We might be in for a bit of a slog in this second game.
Yeah, I mean, this is exactly what Leona wants to do, though, right? Both of these players don't really need to score points early on. They want the game to go long. So, we're in for a long haul, I feel like, no matter what. And it's going to be up to whoever has the better stages into the late game. While, unfortunately, for MrRishi, did have, at one point, the better late game. That Zenith Blade that stunned that Tiana Crown Guard kind of completely took it over. And so now Fiora is going to be able to score that first point. He is on his 3rd turn.
And they both passed
yeah,
turn 1.
mean,
that is not something you see every day. We just had it clarified on the side here. Both passing on turn 1. That is kind of a shocker, and especially when you're on the play, that is already bad enough. But when you're on the draw and also cannot take advantage of your opponent misfiring in that way, man, that is quite a bailout that you're all too thankful for when you are MrRishi in this match.
Yeah, so the issue here is that you are the one that put this Sigil of the Storm onto the battlefield, which means that it's going to be kind of awkward to want to go in there. And for right now, it feels like neither of these players want to do so. And while this Fiora is a 6 into a 4, there is still 2 runes available, and it looks like a Discipline is going to be the response. So it is going to be up to
However,
Matt to have the response into it, and it looks like he does, considering dropping down this Defy. And there it is.
yeah, there you go, man. Really outclassing your opponent in a pretty straight up way like this. Like, it is so devastating, right? Because you know the tools available to you are so similar to your opponent that these early exchanges, these early skirmishes not going your way can really mean that you are behind the entirety of the game. And when Fiora is already sitting mighty and dealing with it, especially in Leona deck where the deflect cost really can stack up if you are not careful, might be what Machio is looking for to push away his opponent behind him and make sure there is no catching up allowed.
So it looks like a Emperor's Call is going to be used, the repeat cost as well. So 2 more Sand Soldiers going to be developed. And just as a deterrent for this Leona here, if you want to get rid of this Fiora, you're going to have to get rid of your Leona, is the answer.
And also, I think these Sand Soldiers have been really making a difference. We have not seen as many pop up on Rishi's side here now, have we? And I think the extra bodies are really problematic for Leona to deal with efficiently, because the only thing that deals with it very efficiently are high-powered or high-might creatures, which Leona has the answers for from now till the end of the week. So it is really a bit of a rock and a hard place that Rishi is finding himself in. But look at that hand size. Sitting on 6 cards by himself, that makes that this single attack from Leona is a lot more threatening than it looks, especially when you take into account that Machio is tapped out.
So he's going to stun the Fiora and then use the Hidden Blade. And while he's tapped out, it means that both of these units are going to get taken out as well. And so while he is able to draw 2 cards from this Hidden Blade, I feel like he certainly didn't want this to happen. Spent 4 runes just to be able to try and deal with, or energy rather, just to be able to try and deal with this. And unfortunately is not able to do so. And so now MrRishi is very high on the tempo here. It's going to be up to the Leona player, up to, they're both the Leona
Look
players.
familiar.
It's going to be up to Matt to try and respond in kind. And so it's going to take his time to kind of reset on the board, which means that MrRishi gets an extra point for free. And now there's this 2-point disparity. And this is not the place you want to be in.
Yeah, and this is really that situation that you can find yourself in a match of Titans like this. And not only in power that they can field on the field, but also in the way they operate. It really feels like we are watching a slog where it really takes a full turn to wind up that punch before it can hit a massive blow like we've seen before. So we're really going back and forth. And when you have a singular loss through the Harness Dragon, which seems to be the key tech for MrRishi on the blue side here, is paying out in a big way. And when they have that lead established for themselves, it is up to Maggio to find a way to catch up once more. And when they keep walking into these death blows that are landing, that becomes rougher and rougher.
Yeah, so the issue is this, like you just mentioned, this Harness Dragon. Look, last game it had a huge impact. Unfortunately, that early game that Matt was able to establish was just
Yeah.
too much to overcome. But this game, it's felt very back and forth, and this Harness Dragon is completely getting away with it right now. And while there is a set Kingpin on the board, it is just a 5-might unit. There are no buffs available as of yet. And yeah, I mean, I'm very much feeling confident if I'm MrRishi here. Look, this Leona's going to be able to come in and attack. He'll be able to buff the Harness Dragon because of the stun. So the Harness Dragon will be a 7. And suddenly, what once felt like a very beatable board state now kind of almost feels like an impossible feat to overcome. And if there's a second Harness Dragon to come, I just don't know how Matt's going to get himself out of that hole.
There's one big difference between this state and the one we had previously. This time, Machio does have the energy to spit out these combat tricks to try and equalize in the field. However, he's looking down the barrel of an even larger gun with more cards and more energy at their disposal. So the first shot has been fired, and let's see if it does end up getting a response. It is the first counter of a spell or a ability, and you're gonna have to fire back and forth. What is left in the tank? It gets his card immediately. This might be the only trick he had up his sleeve.
That not so fast, unfortunately, wasn't fast enough. And so now there is a stunned unit on his board, and Zenith Blade's going to have to be the response just to be able to protect his side of the field. And now not so fast is going to be used in response. And every every shot fired just had the answer, and oh my, complete blowout. I'm at a loss of words for how strong that was.
I think we're scooping as
and
well.
It looks like that's just the surrender.
I mean, how do you recover from that? You are trying to fire cannonballs, but all your powder is moist and wet. It is not firing whatsoever. A few sparks and a hiss, but no follow-up in any significant way.
MrRishi understands that the Sigil of the Storm is going to be able to slow down this game a lot, so wants to be able to play it on the draw, and opted for that Windswept Teeth on the blind, which I was not expecting.
That really emphasizes the early game pressure you can mount up. You're really funneling your resources into that single battlefield, and when you are on the play and you manage to hit that turn one body that you can maneuver around in the upcoming turns, that is going to pay out in a big way. Because once you manage to get on the battlefield, you can already get into a position where you can start to fortify yourself, set up a bastion that is unsiegeable, or when they do, it will come at such a high cost that the clapback might be one that they cannot recover from. Let's see how it plays out, because I believe that is absolute disaster, because that is a on the draw turn where they managed to hit not a single card once again.
Yeah, that's, I mean, I think that might be 3 for 3 games there where no unit has been developed. And considering going on to the Sigil of the Storm says, actually, I don't know why I'd even consider that.
We might be falling
and
for
then
it.
opts not to do so. Hidden Blade is going to come down, and the Discipline does not help the response, but I think he just wants to be able to cycle.
Just getting the extra draw in there might be what he needs. See if he can get a secondary body ready, and with the Discipline, that will be drawing 3 cards. And we've seen how important it can be to hit those 3 cards, to see more cards than your opponent, to have more resources available to make maybe less economical plays, but you can burden that cost. And that is exactly what we see transpire right here.
Yeah, so this Lonely Paro is going to come down, and I think this is really just kind of the best case scenario for you if you are Matt. Definitely don't want to be using that Discipline, but it sounds like he just doesn't have any direct answers as of yet. So going to play it patiently here. And now in response, MrRishi is going to be able to develop this Fiora for his turn 2, which definitely feels a lot better than a Lonely Poro. But that does mean that Matt is going to come in and get that extra point potentially before this Fiora gets a chance to get in.
Yeah, and I think with the Discipline as well, the value of a Discipline is kind of mitigated in a Leona matchup where, so many of your larger threats can get nullified through that stun effect. So getting to see extra cards and dig deeper towards that Hidden Blade might be exactly the path of your highest chances in this exact situation where you can win. And I think that really makes or breaks a great player, that they can adapt to the situation and what is called for in that very situation. Because they know that maybe Discipline in the most other matchups, great card to have, but we are not playing most games here. We are playing the Leona mirror, and that requires a change of pace, that requires a different gear to be operating in, and he is switching quickly. And can Rishi keep up?
So Rishi is going to be at 6 runes here. Unfortunately, that means no Harness Dragon going to be able to respond to this Leona. And so now this, I forget the name of that card right there,
Blood
but
Money.
Blood money. Thank you. Yes, is going to be able to get himself 2 tokens, and because this Lonely Poro died by itself, he is going to be able to draw a card as well. And unfortunately, didn't want to try and fight that Fiora as there were again just 6 runes available. So definitely no very serious threat through that blood money. Just wants to be able to get those gold tokens for later. And now MrRishi has to decide what he wants to do with the rest of his turn here. The
Yeah.
Leona definitely is a consideration, but
Let's
I just don't know how you're supposed to keep that
Split.
Fiora alive.
Because
Sorry.
let's take a look at the lay of the land. No, you're fine. Don't worry about it. Let's take a look at the lay of the land, because when you are combining extra energy, extra power in combination with all of that extra card draw, yeah, you're losing a single unit that you wanted to get rid of regardless. It scored you the point. The tempo, you are so favored, and I understand that Rishi is passing the turn, keeping as many tricks available as possible, but you might be fighting a losing battle here because you are facing off against someone with a bigger gun and they have more bullets in the chamber.
I'll have to see how he navigates this properly. Oh, just a stack of runes right on top of each other somehow. That's odd. But no, okay. So yeah, this is a pretty difficult scenario here if you are MrRishi. Look, he's forcing himself to keep all of his runes available. Does not have any real way to answer this Leona other than just try and fight it out here. This buff is going to potentially come out. MrRishi is considering popping this not so fast, and looks like he is going to fire it off right now. But there is potentially that Defy in response, and it looks like that is going to be the case. And so now a Defy
I knew
in
you were going to
response
defy
to
my
the
Defy.
Defy.
we are in a full race to the bottom, but it seems to have come to a quite an abrupt stop, and it will be prevailing for Macho, putting the Hidden Blade in there, putting order to business. Now, what is the cost paid? It will be just this, and this Fiora was not mighty, right? So the power cost that you had to pay for it, very, very doable. And just look at the difference in economy right now. Just look, we are looking at 2 different beasts. One is in their prime. They're howling on top of the mountain, and one is limping back home, licking their wounds, looking for a way back in. But they're in a tough position to be in, because even though they are only behind a single point, the economy to recover from a blow like this is simply non-existent. It is of very small size, and meanwhile, Machio is pumping out more threats by the minute and still has energy left up to address whatever kind of recovery attempt you are making.
So the issue here is that MrRishi just didn't have any other units to try and fight after the fact here. And because he recycled 2 runes, that just means that he's stuck at the 6 rune threshold. And Leona really wants to be able to get to that 8 runes, wants to be able to, fire off these Harness Dragons, wants to be able to fire off these Tianas, and he's just not able to do so. Matt has just created such a power vacuum that MrRishi is forced to answer every turn, and for whatever reason, just has not had that capability to do so. And so now he's going to use that repeat cost, get himself a couple of tokens, and hopefully find himself some better footing for these next couple of turns.
Yeah, because currently it really is a losing war right now. So you're going to have to pick your fights very carefully and realize that, all right, we're going to have to hunker down just that little bit. However, you are against the clock in this matchup, because every turn you allow Maggio to get more of a footing in this setup he has for himself. Means that he gets to acquire more of these stunning effects. He gets to acquire more hidden blades. He gets to power up his runes even further. So can you outpace someone that is already on a slope like this, on heights that seem insurmountable, but we have seen it done before?
So Set's going to come down. Okay. Point was acquired. He should be at 4 points. So I'm not sure why he's losing his point. But yeah, the set is going to come down. I'm not sure why it's readied.
I think it's important to go through the motions still.
Yeah.
Make sure that we are not missing any of the details. Now, with this set that should be coming through like this, the Sand Soldiers is a bit of a pickle to be in, because I think there's many boosts available to get this set in a more comfortable position to hold on that little bit more. However, when you're looking at this setup, I think you can really start to look for to not you don't have to get the plays done anymore as Matt. You can really just focus on investing minimal resources to hold on to your still expanding lead. It is up to Rishi to come up with the answers. So give him that room to have to commit. And I think the patience that Matt is displaying right here is absolutely crucial to win out in a matchup like this.
I think what MrRishi has to do is find a way to get on to the Sigil of Storm, force Matt to recycle one of his runes just to be able to answer that fact, and then hopefully find something like a Tiana ground card in time to be able to answer what's going on here. And while he does have, quite a few turns as Matt is just holding on to the singular battlefield, it does. Every turn counts is the best way I'm going to put it here. Each turn that passes is each turn that closes a door for MrRishi, and it's going to be up to MrRishi to kind of find the Zenith Blade at the right time, or find himself a Harness Dragon to kind of pop the enemy Leona and be able to answer the set effectively.
Yeah, and I do get the priority that they're putting down. The Sigil of Storm here is so unattractive because you are already fighting a opponent who is on such a tearing economy that it feels so counterintuitive to invest to only keep up. However, sometimes you have to recognize the situation you are in. You might be relying on these lower percentage plays, but they are still keeping the door open for a win. Where if you try and fight the same battle over and over again, where you know you are at a disadvantage, you need something to shake things up. Or, every day that passes, like you said, it feels like your chances are slimming down by every minute that ticks through the hourglass.
So now this Fiora is going to come down. Matt Gia just going to continue to play this game slow, and look, he says, I can just cheese this
pressure.
1 point right now, and I love this a lot. He understands that his opponent's tapped out, so no Zenith Blade, no shenanigans available for MrRishi right now. And while the Sigil of Storm is incredibly unattractive, when you're at 10, 11 runes, losing one rune doesn't feel that bad.
Exactly, he has the economy to swallow these costs like it's nothing. And meanwhile, the cost that Rishi has to invest to even stop this explosive lunge that Matt is making here, it's gonna be relative to him. It's gonna be a much higher cost. So I love here Matt capitalizing, reading the situation, and knowing what his strong points currently are, and that is his superior economy, and he is putting it to work. Look, he doesn't even want to contest it right now.
Yeah, I mean, I kind of tend to agree with MrRishi. I don't have the runes available to kind of negate what's going on here. And look, MrRishi has a plethora of cards in hand. He's got 6 to the 7 that Matt has in his hand. So he's managed to recover in terms of card economy. But these rune differences, I think, is going to play a huge factor. And what looks like it's going to be a Zenith Blade in response is going to be an absolutely devastating scenario, as now this Leona can come in, receive herself, give that set a buff, and then there's just no way to get around it here. And it looks like he's actually instead going to buff that Fiora, put her to Mighty, give her that deflect, give her that ganking, and give that set that just
as well.
+1 buff.
Undefiable, my bad. And that is the key aspect here, right? These spells that are much harder to interact with for MrRishi than before. And it really shows how Matt can pick his moments, how he can make these costly plays without really suffering the consequences from it, because he got himself that early breathing room. And now it is up to MrRishi to show that he has the answers, that he has what it takes to claw himself back into this game, to even have a shot at locking in that top cot. Because if he doesn't come up with the answers really soon, it might be Matt who will be securing himself a cozy spot to move on to the next round.
Yeah, and with the thing is that Matt's already at 5 points. If MrRishi isn't able to break this hold right now, uh, there's going to be exactly one turn remaining, and so now this Sand Soldier is going to come in, and not so fast is going
Oh,
to be the response, and it's going to be up to a Defy to be able to try and respond in kind. And so now, is there that other Defy to be able to stop it here? And it looks like another
oh,
not so fast is instead going to be the answer here. All three
he's not
not
tapped
so
out
fast
just
have
yet.
been developed. And 3 Defies, I think 4 Defies in total have been cast this game. It has been an absolute counterspell bloodbath, and it looks like Matt Gia is the one that's going to be coming up on top.
It definitely looks like it, but man, it really highlights how important it is to get that many cards in your hand, to acquire yourself, to shape your hand, to have the answers it requires for the situation. Now, it has come at quite a cost. This economy is crippled on this side of Matt. But if it means prevailing on this battlefield once more, it might be everything he needs to push further.
I tend to agree with you here. Look, the situation is this Fiora is uh, insanely big. This set is insanely big. This Leona is not going to be able to survive just for one
Man,
more, or is going to be able to survive rather for just one more turn. And now, 2 more points is going to be acquired. Matt or MrRishi is going to have to get onto the Sigil of Storm. And so, if either of these battlefields is not immediately captured on this next turn, the game is over.
yeah, it is not looking too hot right now if you're a MrRishi fan. And with the passing coming through, it might be all she wrote if there is nothing else left up with only just 2 energy at their disposal. Man, that's gonna be hard. All right, we are just clearing out just that little bit. Now he will not be conquering, so there will not be any recycling necessary. That is a funny little interaction. However, is it enough? Because you are sacrificing bodies once again that are a lot more valuable to yourself than they are for your opponent. But it is a sacrifice that is necessary to even have a shot at making a comeback in this match.
So Matt has a plethora of options here, right? I mean, he's at that 6 point threshold, going from 6 to 8. Definitely not the most difficult thing in the world here. And because this Fiora exists, it seems like this Leona is just going to come right over onto the other side of the battlefield, get that extra point while he has it, and just play the hold game. He's got 4 runes
Yeah.
available. It seems like he's got a couple of thwonks to be able to protect this. And so now it's going to be up to
And
Mr.
to back
Rishi to
this
figure
up,
out how to fight through this, through those thwonks. And he's already used, I think, all of his defies.
yeah, and to back this up, right? There's still a Zenith Blade available as well, and we have seen so many cards from Matt already. He's got to see so much of his deck that it is a very real threat that there is another Zenith Blade lurking to just push Leona back to the windswept hillock here and be where she is needed, where she is necessary to hold on just a little more. And do you have enough power? Do you have enough plays left to be contesting 2 battlefields at the same time into a Leona that still has 4 energy up, 4 cards to make sure she has everything needed to hold on? It's gonna have to come from very deep down. The options have to be perfect, stars aligned, hoops jumped through. But when there's a chance, even a tiny one, it is worth sticking it out. It is worth hanging on, and you have hopes still.
So Mr. Rishi is going to be in a difficult scenario here. We don't know how many hidden blades he has left, but that could be a way out of this here. I mean, look, you can hidden blade one Fiora, you can hidden blade the Leona, and if there's no defies, no not so fast, which we have to assume as there's been a plethora of counterspells thrown this game here between both of these players. So if hidden blades, if he's got the double hidden blade, he's got some hope left in the tank, but a thwonk might just snuff it out.
Yeah, and this is the situation you want to achieve for yourself when you're Matt. When there are so many favorable cards that can lead you to a win, and your opponent only has so few options to even have a chance of holding on. It is going to come down to the tiniest difference that they can make here. And Matt is looking to Zenith Blade himself to victory.
So the Zenith Blade is going to be the response. Looks like that 4-cost Fiora is going to be the one dragged in with this Zenith Blade. And now that Leona is going to be the one stunned here. And yeah, I don't know how you're supposed to get yourself out of this here. There's 2 5-might units because that Leona does have shield and she is on the defense. And so there is 7 might in response on MrRishi's side. However, 4 of that got stunned away. So only 3 might to work with. And through a Zenith Blade, I don't know how he's supposed to get himself out.
No, it is a tight spot to be in, and we might see the last death throes of this match as Matt can already smell that top cut. His seed is waiting for him. He is so close. It is all within reach, and this might be the all deciding turn. That Leona is going straight down the drain, and that is even with the other battlefield still fully unanswered, and he needs to address both of these issues.
Unfortunately for him, just not enough left in the gas tank here. The Leona is going to be able to attack in, but again, just not enough might left remaining, and because of that, MrRishi is not going to be able to pass on, and so big congratulations here for Matt Gia, is able to hold on. No more runes available for MrRishi, which means that Matt Gia is going to be able to make this top cut. And I think this is the first time we've ever had a Leona top cut as well.
Yeah, first time for everything. Matt Gia will be moving on to the next round. Will be making the top cut, but man, hats off to MrRishi. You cannot say that he didn't try till the very bitter end.